What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another SK Wealth Academy podcast. Not sure what number this is, but I'll figure it out. It's volume 8 of financial news of the Horrific and Parasitic for the week of September 7th through September 11th. And in honoring the victims of the September 11th tragedy in New York City with the World Trade Center tower attack, I'm going to start this volume off by discussing a lot of the facts that were dismissed as conspiracy theories back then, because for a lot of millennials who are not old enough to remember that day, either because you were too young or perhaps not even born yet, what happened was when a lot of Americans questioned the official narrative told by the US government that has now been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to be complete lies. Other Americans screamed at them and said that they were conspiracy theorists. So that's why I believe it's important today, because a lot of the facts I'm going to discuss, probably to this day, a lot of people still don't know. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to talk about cryptocurrencies in the second half of this weekly roundup of financial news. So I guess the first part's not really financial news, but I think it's really important to remember the victims of 9/11, because I lived in LA at the time, but originally I was born and raised in Philly, so I had tons of friends in New York. And for anyone that grew up in that corridor, Philly, New York, DC, we all knew people that either died in those towers or had friends that knew people that died, because I was among those people. I didn't personally know anyone that died, but I had friends who were good friends with people that died during that day. So, it's not so hard to believe that we would fall for the massive lies being told to us by the parasitic ruling class about the gravity of our current crisis, right? The artificial crisis invented by the parasitic ruling class that has necessitated global lockdowns called COVID-19. It's not that COVID-19 is not real. For those of you who listen to me, you know 1,000 times I've said this, that the virus is real. It's just the gravity of the situation and the response to the perception that's been created that this virus is super serious is completely fake. So when you listen to 9/11, and that's why I think it's important to talk about this, then we should realize that it's really easy for us to fall to the lies of the parasitic ruling class is telling us about COVID-19, when so many of us fell for the lies told to us about 9/11. So before I get started, because I'm going to draw a lot of the facts of which I speak about right now from James Corbett, and he had this report called 9/11 Trillions, Follow the Money, and I'll put the link in the show notes below. I would encourage all of you to go look at that video, because I'm going to draw a lot of this information from that particular video. So I got to give credit where credit is due, because apparently Mr. Corbett did a lot of research in following the money trails. Now, some of this I had already heard about, but others I had not, because I knew that Larry Silverstein had taken over the lease for the Twin Towers in buildings 4 and 5, and he already owned building number 7 that also collapsed during the attack on 9/11. And there was a BBC reporter that was saying that Building 7 had fallen when Building 7 was in the background right behind him. And this is a crazy thing, right? Because somebody confronted him, because apparently the BBC deleted that information. But in the age of the internet, people say things. So there is a reporter that later approached this BBC reporter that had been fed news to say Building 7 had fallen before it actually was demolished. And so he was a British reporter, so he didn't know what Building 7 was and didn't realize it was still standing tall right behind him as he was reporting. Apparently, Building 7 has just collapsed. And so he was confronted years later by people that found and uncovered the video of him saying that. And they asked him if he said that. And he said, no, I don't remember ever saying that. So he was lying. How can you, of course you're going to remember saying that. But then these two street whatever they call them, like street journalists, they pulled out the video and showed them. And then the BBC journalist was like, oh yeah, that's correct. I was there. And I do remember reporting that it had collapsed before it actually collapsed. So there's just so many crazy things about 9/11. Now, Larry Silverstein is a complete snake, and I'll tell you why he's a morally repugnant and despicable human being. Was not because nobody knows, okay, just because he signed a 99-year lease for the Twin Towers 6 weeks before it collapsed. And even though at that time, the property insurance before he took over the lease was only $1.5 billion on the two Twin Towers, okay? And the two Twin Towers on the previous insurance were only valued at $1.2 billion. But Larry Silverstein, as soon as he took over that lease, upped the insurance on those two Twin Towers to $3.55 billion. Okay, so that was on a previous valuation of $1.2 billion, so 3 times more, because 3 times more is 3.6, right? He upped it to $3.55 billion. And he also specifically took out insurance for terrorist attacks, just 6 weeks before the terrorist attacks happened. And he was also able to take over that lease, only putting down $14 million of his own money. And then with specific clauses, even though he put in the least amount of money of only $14 million, that gave him exclusive rights to rebuilding the properties should they be destroyed, which just happened 6 weeks later. So obviously, Silverstein is the snake and the key to understanding what really happened on 9/11. Like if somebody renditioned Silverstein, like bagged him and then renditioned him to Guantanamo Bay, you could really find out if you really wanted to know what happened on 9/11, because that snake knows. And because this is why I say he's a despicable, repugnant human being, because as soon as those two Twin Towers came down, he was on the phone just hours later with his lawyer asking if they could sue for 2 separate terrorist attacks and file a $7.1 billion claim instead of the just tripled $3.55 billion insurance he put on those properties. So who in the world is thinking during the middle of an ongoing tragedy that very same day, September 11th, he was on the phone with his lawyers, seeing how much money they could get out of this disaster when thousands of people are dying, when you're seeing people jump off the rooftops because they don't want to get burned alive and killing themselves that way. What kind of monster is on the phone saying, how much money can I make from this? Larry Silverstein is your answer. And not only did he he actually ended up receiving $4.5 billion of insurance payments after the attack. So more than the $3.55 billion that he had taken out on the properties. And of course, he didn't receive all $4.5 billion because it was like a collaboration of people that he went in with on the lease, I believe. But like I said, if you really want to know the exact details, just go to the show notes and look at the James Corbett report called 9/11 Trillions Follow the Money, because it has all the exact details, because I'm just going from memory on whether he received all $4.5 billion payout or he received he received a portion of that. But not only that, then Silverstein also sued United Airlines and American Airlines for another $3.5 billion payment for their negligence and allowing the terrorist attacks to happen on the Twin Towers, which he benefited and received billions of dollars for. So apparently his initial claim was struck down in court, but then it went on appeal. I don't know what happened after it went on appeal. So again, do I find this surprising that such morally despicable people exist that are immediately trying to figure out how they can profit the most in the middle? I mean, Larry Silverstein didn't even give it a few days. He was on the phone hours after the planes hit the towers with his lawyers saying, how much money can we make off of this? And why it doesn't surprise me, because I saw other documentaries that came out back then in which bankers said that when they heard, as soon as they heard about the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center towers, instead of mourning the people they knew that were going to die, they said the first thought, this is what they said, the banker said, the first thought that came into their minds is, how can I monetize this tragedy? Should I open up puts on the S&P 500 index? Should I buy gold futures contracts? How can I monetize this tragedy? How can I monetize deaths? That's what they were thinking. So that's why, like, I'm not saying that Larry Silverstein was involved in what happened, although, you know, the conditions are super suspect, right? Number one, he bought the lease just 6 weeks before it happened. He specifically took out insurance for terrorist attacks that apparently did not exist on the existing insurance just 6 weeks before it happened, and then tripled the insurance as far as what the alleged worth of those two twin towers were 6 weeks before the terrorist attacks happened. Okay, so again, doesn't say he was involved in any way, but it does imply that he knows a lot more than what he let on. And during that time as well, one other thing a lot of people don't know, because I watched this documentary, there were French filmmakers there that day that were actually filming a documentary on Engine 7 Ladder 1 Firehouse of Lower Manhattan. But they ended up calling the documentary simply 9/11 because they were filming that documentary when 9/11 happened. So they went to the towers with that particular Engine 7 fire department squad, and well before the towers collapsed. And I can't remember if it was the North Tower or the South Tower, but I do know that the South Tower, the plane hit about the 60th floor, and the North Tower hit about the 95th floor. When they went, there were massive cracks in the walls and the the support pillars on the ground floor, and all the, it had plate glass windows from ceiling to floor were blown out on all sides on the ground floor. So the explanation that was given, because people say, how could they have been blown out from a plane impacting on the 60th and 95th floor? They said there are two explanations that were given that has since been disproved. One was that they said it was the impact of the planes flying into the building, and then the compression of the air traveling down 60 stories. 60 stories, blowing out the elevator doors, and then blew out all the windows. But still, that wouldn't explain the cracks. It wouldn't explain, because you can watch the documentary, there are massive cracks in the pillars, like visible gap, not just like a small hairline fracture crack, cracks that were wide enough to clearly see, that were all in the support pillars, and all the walls, parts of the walls were crumbled, and on the floor, on the ground floor. So I'm not an engineer, but it seems to me that that's almost impossible for the impact of compressed air to cause all that. And then number two, the engineers of that building, when they were interviewed later, said that likely was impossible because the elevator shafts likely closed after the impact because of the fireball. They said immediately any fire that gets into the elevator shaft triggers closures of the elevator shaft, so the fire can't travel down, which means that compressed air cannot travel down. This is what the engineers of the building said when interviewed. And then secondly, if you just go to the internet to this day and ask why were the windows blown out on the ground floor of the World Trade Center towers, you still get disinformation, because I saw an answer that said the windows were blown out from the compression of the air from collapsing floors above. But like I said, if you look up this documentary made on Engine 7 of the Lower Manhattan Fire Department, Ladder 1, you will see that in the documentary they show that all the firemen were there well before the towers started collapsing, and all the windows were already blown out. So whoever's still telling that tall tale today that the windows were blown out from compression of the air from collapsing floors above, that documentary has visual evidence that's a complete lie. So it's just very interesting. And then the other thing, of course, I knew, because I had just quit working for Smith Barney Beverly Hills back then. But I do remember, because I was in the industry, that there were there were abnormally large volumes of put options bought on United Airlines and American Airlines that week of 9/11, as well as like all the financial firms that existed in those Twin Tower buildings in which their stock plummeted. So here's what I know to be complete falsehoods as well. Okay, people said that they investigated what was the collective amount of put options on United Airlines. They said $180,000. What did it go to? It said it went to $2.4 million after the stock price plummeted. Same thing with American Airlines. They said $337,000 put options were taken out on American Airlines just that week, just like a few days before 9/11 happened, and that immediately went to $1.8 million. Now, the explanation I specifically recall reading in the papers was how come they didn't go question and arrest those traders that opened up those positions, because it seems kind of weird, like they knew that a terrorist attack was going to happen before it happened. Because remember that James Bond movie? I don't know for any of you guys that are James Bond fans and gals that are James Bond fans out there. There was a movie, I don't recall which one it was, but it was before, it might have been the first Daniel Craig one, when Daniel Craig played James Bond, in which the James Bond villain took out millions of dollars in put options on an airline and then tried to crash a jet on a flight by that airline, so his put options would become hundreds of millions of dollars and he could cash out. But James Bond, the hero, prevented the airline crash, so that James Bond villain lost his millions of dollars in put options because he became worthless when he couldn't crash the jet. So that was exactly like what happened on 9/11. Now, what the explanation as far as why those traders weren't arrested, or at a minimum question, was given. I remember this was like in reputable financial rags like Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg or Reuters saying that that they couldn't arrest anyone because the traders never showed up to claim their profits, which is total garbage, because anyone knows that you don't even have to work in the financial industry to know that the explanation is garbage, because just to open up a bank account, you have to provide legal ID and documentation. So to open up a trading account anywhere in the world, you have to provide legal ID and documentation. And those identities of those traders that open up those put options on United Airlines, on American Airlines, on I can't remember the names of the different insurance companies and financial institutions that also had offices and their shares plummeted. It would all be known. It would all be known. It's impossible for it not to be unknown. So I don't know how the explanation was ever given, which is completely false. And even if false IDs were used, you can still trace the false IDs to real people and go question them. So there's just so much garbage taught about 9/11 that people believe. And that's why people can still be fooled, because the parasitic ruling class realized back then, hey, look at all the dummies out there believing the garbage we're telling them as far as official explanations of what happened on 9/11. So we can give them the same garbage, create an artificial crisis through a real virus, but a real virus that is like no more dangerous than the regular flu virus, and then create another crisis to achieve our goals. And that's exactly what they've done this year. Okay, so let's move on to I'm going to note this at 18 minutes and 20 seconds. Hopefully I can remember. This is where I start talking about cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of discussion about FedCoin. What's FedCoin in news recently? It's the U.S. central bank digital currency, or apparently what the U.S. central bankers are pursuing. My personal opinion, as I'll tell you why I believe this, is that it's already been developed and ready to roll out right now, but they're just saying it's in where it's in development phase, because this has been discussed as early as 2013. I recall at least reading articles about cryptocurrency being developed by the U.S. central bankers in 2013. That's only what I remembered. So it could have been discussed well before then. So you don't think in 8 years that this thing is ready to roll out? Of course it's ready to roll out. So, and in fact, multi-billion-dollar businesses have always been built on theft of intellectual property. So all they would need to do with years of Bitcoin being in existence already is to just copy the Bitcoin model, right, for their own digital cryptocurrency. So because Bill Gates saw the graphic user interface of Apple and sold it as Windows when he recognized Apple's management's mistake of not marketing their GUI software, but focusing on the marketing of hardware. And Steve Jobs of Apple allegedly stole the idea of the computer mouse from Xerox, although a lot of people thought Apple invented the computer mouse. Zuckerberg stole the idea of Facebook from Harvard students that hired him as a consultant to develop Facebook, and he just stole it as for his own. Probably because he was brought in by U.S. intelligence agencies to develop the idea of Facebook. And then Goldman Sachs had a client, what was a client? It was an oil hedge fund that they were involved in doing a private equity deal that never came to fruition, but they got complete access to all their financial statements, so they knew they had massive short positions in the oil futures market. I think it was called SEM Group, S-E-M, SEM Group, I believe, off the top of my head. That was the name of the hedge fund that had massive short positions. And they used that knowledge, that non-public knowledge, to squeeze the shorts of SEM Group, put them into bankruptcy, and make billions of dollars by going long in the oil. Taking out short positions in the oil. Going long, because they squeezed the shorts to make the prices go up. Because they deliberately spiked the prices to $150 a barrel back then. So they went long oil futures and made billions of dollars by bankrupting SEM Group. So the examples of theft and billions made in profits in the global corporate world achieved from stolen ideas, from stolen information, from other companies is literally endless. So let me tell you what Fed governor, Fed meaning U.S. Central Bank Governor Lael Brainard recently said, just in some type of meeting. I don't know if it was a meeting of the Bank for International Settlements. I can't recall, but I found the transcript of the speech that he gave on August 13th, just last month, about a month ago, about the development of a U.S. central bank digital currency. He said, the COVID-19 pandemic is taking a tremendous toll on communities across America. Excuse me. Especially, sorry for those of you that are listening to this on earbuds, because I probably just blew out your eardrums. But the COVID-19 pandemic is taking a tremendous toll on communities across America, especially households and small businesses with the least resources to weather the storm. The COVID-19 crisis is a dramatic reminder of the importance of a resilient and trusted payments infrastructure that is accessible to all Americans. My response to that statement is no. The lockdowns, the unnecessary economic lockdowns mandated by the parasitic ruling class is what is killing people all over the world, not the COVID virus. You complete snake, Lael Brainard. So he also stated, we have been conducting in-house experiments for the last few years, though means that include the board's technology lab, which has been building and testing a range of distributed ledger platforms to understand their potential opportunity and risk. This multidisciplinary team with application developers from the Fed banks of Cleveland, Dallas, and New York supports a policy team at the board, studying the implications of digital currencies on the payments ecosystem, monetary policy, financial stability, blah, 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 blah. So again, do I trust that statement that this cryptocurrency of the U.S. Central Bank is just under development stages when they've been speaking about this since 2013? Of course not. You know, bankers lie all the time. They're lying thieves and snakes. And in fact, I mentioned this, that I wrote a screenplay called Vipers and Thieves 15 years ago. I didn't get anywhere, so I might just self-publish it, just put it online, copyright it, and then if any agent picks it up, wants to make it into a movie, because I got nowhere with it. But in that screenplay I wrote 15 years ago, in my screenplay, because it took place in the future, everything that's happening today, I wrote about it 15 years ago. So I wrote that there'd be soaring food prices, there'd be looting in grocery stores, there'd be riots all around the world, that in fact, I called there was already 100% digital currency in the world. So there were thieves that were just stealing gold bars, because there was my screenplay took place during the years when all fiat currencies and the paper notes, the fabric and cloth notes were being phased out. So during their bank robberies, they only targeted physical gold bars. They wanted nothing to do with the cash and just would throw cash into the sky for the civilians to scramble along that would block like coming police to come arrest them because they were basically stealing gold bars from Brink trucks that also had cash that was being phased out of the system. So again, I even said in that screenplay that I called it NEMA, National Electronic Money Act, that had passed. So everything I said 15 years ago is coming to fruition. How do I know that? Because I studied what the parasitic ruling class wants to do. So it's not like I was a visionary and that everything that's happening now, I told people in this screenplay I wrote 15 years ago was going to happen. And then the reason I say that for the bankers to control cryptocurrencies, what they're looking at right now is control of the distributed ledger technology. They don't care about trying to control Bitcoin if they're not indeed part of Bitcoin, because they may have rolled out Bitcoin, because I do believe that was a state-sponsored creation with intelligence agencies, but they may have rolled it out with the idea of replacing it with another cryptocurrency just to condition people to get used to 100% digital currencies. But they're only concerned with controlling the distribution technology, the distributed ledger technology. They don't care about control, even if they have nothing to do with Bitcoin. They don't care about controlling Bitcoin. They know they can control all cryptocurrencies around the world by controlling the distributed ledger technology, as we saw from JP Morgan Blythe Master Snake, or JP Morgan Snake, Blythe Masters, who was the head of the commodities trading desk at JP Morgan, who lied and is on record of lying, because you can go to YouTube and see her lying, saying that JP Morgan never manipulated silver prices lower, because she was questioned about that multiple times when silver prices took a dive, because JP Morgan was the banker that was participating the most in the silver futures market, which I will actually also release in an upcoming article on my news site. So go to my news site, malamalama.com/WordPress, because I'm going to show you how the data shows that JP Morgan is one of the biggest players still today in the silver futures markets. But how do I know she was lying when she testified that JP Morgan bankers never manipulated silver prices? Because JP Morgan bankers have been arrested by the Feds under RICO charges, racketeering charges for silver and gold price manipulation. So the bankers under Snake Blythe Masters, have admitted in court they manipulated precious metal prices. So she's every bit a morally reprehensible human being as Larry Silverstein. And so, or Silverstein, I believe his last name is pronounced Silverstein. So anyways, when she resigned as head of commodities trading at JP Morgan, she went to work for a blockchain company, Digital Assets, that was working on developing distributed ledger technology. So that's how I know that the bankers are targeting control of the distributed ledger technology is the most important factor in the cryptocurrency chain to control all cryptocurrencies. And that about wraps up news of the Horrific and Parasitic for the week of September 11th. Hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment below. Do you agree with me that the bankers really don't care about controlling certain cryptocurrencies, but if they control the distributed ledger technology, they know they can control all the cryptocurrencies? Okay, thanks so much for watching. And I'm not a cryptocurrency expert. I consider myself a gold and silver expert. So perhaps that is not a correct statement. And if so, please let me know in the comments below. Okay, thanks so much for watching. As always, remain intensely curious. And if you want to become a patron, just know that if you want to know my predictions about gold and silver, they've been as accurate as anyone in the entire world. And I think the most accurate, I believe that I've given the most accurate price predictions in the entire world of anyone. And because what I said is back in 2019, I told my patrons to go heavy into physical gold and physical silver. And I told them specifically what physical gold and silver assets to purchase, which are now up 100% in price as in gold. And the silver physical assets are up, in gold it's up 69%, and silver over 100%. Right now is the recording date of this, when I told my patrons to go heavy into gold and silver assets, because at that time I told them, gold futures were only $1,180. Silver futures were less than $14. And even for this year, my new Patreon still made a killing because I told them to go, again, to buy certain physical gold and silver assets when silver futures prices broke above $17.80 an ounce and gold broke above $1,770 an ounce. And the latest that I just gave on September 1st, when gold futures prices hit $1,990, because I'm not a perma bull as a lot of gold and silver advocates are, when silver prices went to $28.90, I told them gold and silver futures prices were going to take a significant hit, and I gave them the price levels of which they should consider stacking more physical gold in the price pullback. So my calls have been more accurate than anyone else publicly I know in the entire world. So that's what you get for just a cup of Starbucks coffee a month, which, by the way, Starbucks is horrible coffee in my opinion, because I love coffee. You can buy much better coffee for far less than what you buy coffee at Starbucks. So in any event, thanks so much for watching. As always, remain intensely curious and bless up.